to say thanks to the What Work Sharing Knowledge Fund, as well as the Wheel Training Links programme for these webinars. They have helped us fund them and put them on. Thanks to Brenda, who's going to talk about the impact of hidden harm through substance abuse. I think something that's really relevant for all of us. The agenda is at 11 o'clock. There's the welcome and overview, and which I'm doing now. Then at about 15:15, Brenda will bring you through her presentation and her years of experience and expertise. She's probably, her ears are probably red now. She said, I don't have that much, but we know she does. And then we're putting everybody into breakout rooms, and it will allow people to actually share their own practice, discuss what Brenda has said, and hopefully take some of the learning back into the work and the great work and the marvellous work they're doing around the country. And finally, just to wrap up and the next workshop date. Just to say, the Home Visiting Alliance is the, I suppose, the voice of home visiting and of early childhood home visiting in Ireland, and the 5 home visiting programmes: Parent Child Plus, Preparing for Life, Let's Grow Together, Infant Mental Health, the Community Mothers Moving into Community Families, and Life Start. And we're a subgroup of the Prevention and Early Intervention. So somebody asked, how do you join the Home Visiting Alliance? Well, actually, you join PEN, and then you can be part of the Home Visiting Alliance, because we're a subgroup. Okay, and then just to say, we've just done a feasibility study. We had a great session last Friday, both in person and online. I'd say we had maybe 120 or so. It was hard to count the number of people in the rooms. But anyway, it was a great day, and that map just shows where the Home Visiting Alliance members and the programs are. And thanks to everybody who was involved in what is the feasibility study. So we have hard copies. I'll be sending out soft copies next week. I don't know, Annabelle, are they on the website yet?
Yes, they're on the website. Yeah,
they're on the website. So anybody who wants to learn more about how we can scale up, replicate, and expand home visiting, it's there. And the more support we can get to do it, both at local and national level, the better. Finally, here's the Home Visiting Alliance website, and that's where all the materials, the webinars, the previous webinars, this webinar are all stored. So it's and again, if you want to ask questions or contact us, the button is there, and Annabelle is there monitoring it and making sure that everything is right. So I'll now hand over to Brenda to take you through the presentation.
Lovely. Sorry, just bear with me for a moment. Are we okay?
You're all grand.
Oh, great. So first of all, I just want to say thanks so much for showing up for this topic, which is close to my heart. I just want to say a little bit about myself. I'm a family support coordinator for the Dublin North East region. So I work with family services in addiction, and I support the family services that are run throughout Coolock, Kilbarrack, Darndale, Dooneycarney and Baldoyle. And my experience in relation to working with family support is that at a practical level, it's all evidence-based. And I suppose what I love about what I do is that piece, that there are tools and resources and tips that family members can work with in the family home. And it isn't that academic piece that gets lost, I think, sometimes with professionals and service users. Today, I suppose, just to say, my degree is in social care, and my experience has been working with homelessness, women in addiction, and family support, and young people in addiction. So it's quite broad. And I've enjoyed every single service that I've worked in. again, based on the practical work that we can do on the ground. And I'm guessing that's very similar to what you do in relation to your work. You're going into family homes, and you don't get a better opportunity to work with family members at that level than being invited into their home. So this webinar aims to explore some of the issues that can arise due to parental and carer substance use or misuse. And it will define the term hidden harm and how TUSLA's hidden harm strategic statement recognises the impact of hidden harm on all family members. I will discuss the differences and similarities between substance use and misuse. And there are similarities between both, and its impact on the family functioning and parental capacity. We will take a brief look at some information in relation to drugs, and that the home visitors may be more likely to experience or encounter in family homes. And the drugs I chose was cocaine, cannabis, and alcohol, mainly because they're predominantly what we have accessing through families, and that's their experience. We will also participate in a case study. I know, I can hear you groaning already. That some home visitors may encounter in their role. And how would you deal with that? Let's move on.
Brenda, can I just ask you to, would you put that into play mode, so it'll just pop out the screen a bit bigger.
Okay.
Brilliant.
There we go. Is
They're
that better?
perfect. Absolutely
Lovely.
perfect.
Okay. Yeah, we've done. So the Hidden Harm Project. The publication of the Hidden Harm Project acknowledges the experience of children living with and affected by parental substance. I use mis/use because it covers both, to family members using drugs recreationally, I suppose moving on to family members using drugs that are adversely affecting the family home. This has become known as hidden harm because these children are often unknown to many of the services that support families and protect children. Not all parents who misuse substances experience difficulties with parenting capacity. Equally, not all children exposed to parental substance misuse are affected adversely, either in the short or longer term. And however, most children exposed to parental substance misuse need some form of support. Now, I suppose this slide incorporates so much information in those three short headings. And what my experience has shown me in relation to working with family members who are impacted by substance misuse is we now run a Steps to Cope program for young people aged 11 up to 17 who have been adversely impacted by their loved ones' drug use. And when I initially meet the family member, very often they will say that if I say, and how are the other young people in the home? They say, oh, they're fine, they're so good, you wouldn't even know they were there. And that immediately alerts me to the young person adopting coping skills that remove them from the drama of the substance misuse within the family home. And of course, they're being impacted by that. What is hidden harm? And this is Seeing Through Hidden Harm to Brighter Futures. And this is the publication again from the HSE and TUSLA. And it comes from their strategic statement. Parental alcohol and other drug use can affect all aspects of family life. It can disrupt family routines and responsibilities, relationships with relatives and friends, and the family's social circumstances and the social and economic status. The extent to which parental problem, alcohol and other drug use affects the family and each child within a family at any one time and over time is made up by all of these and other interrelated factors. So obviously the slide previous to that, so where the family are they coming from a disadvantaged background versus an affluent background? Are they working class, middle class? What kind of supports they have around their family system? They all impact on the outcomes for the young people within the family home. The effects on the family of parental problem, alcohol and other drug use depends on who is drinking or taking drugs in the family structure and to what level and regularity. And again, I think we can all relate to this in, I suppose, if any of you looking at this presentation, if you have a bottle of wine at the weekend, you have a glass of wine with your meal. A lot of young parents now are recreationally using cocaine at the weekends, you know, so all of these play a role in how we view substance use and how we view substance misuse. The consequences may vary and include verbal aggression, irritability, apathy, verbal and emotional abuse in various aspects, and the domineering behaviour and physical aggression in varying degrees. I think, again, basing the experience through COVID highlighted an increase in all aspects of drug use within family homes. And there was a huge increase in those accessing Childline, Women's Aid, domestic violence supports. And this really was down to being confined into small spaces. Maybe because of the payments, actually people had access to more money than they may have had, and they weren't leaving the family home. So it was like these little containers waiting to burst, these emotional containers for both the children and the parents. There is good evidence to show that problem alcohol and other drug use can and often does compromise parenting capacity and the caregiving environment in which these children grow up. Problem alcohol and other drug use by parents can become the central focus of the adults' lives, feelings, and social behaviour. And I think that shows itself in relation to making a plan about when they're going out for the next drink, or when the kids go to bed, can I open the bottle of wine? Or even before the kids go to bed, can I open a bottle of wine? Crowell and Taylor identified a risk to children's ability to form secure attachments if their parents and carers were impacted or impaired by problem alcohol and other drug use. Research suggests that this may have long-term effects on their emotional health. And I think it's probably fair to say if those supports aren't in place, as there isn't a wider community support like extended family or schools, or, you know, those pieces, additional supports in families, it will affect them. Research shows that the early environment in which care is given, the quality of the attachment between the child and the parent, plays an important role in children's development and the life chances of children as they grow up. I've put in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm sure the majority of you are so familiar with this. But the reason I put it in as a slide is, I suppose, as home visitors going in and making assessments in how they find the family home, that this is a really good practical guide to use. And that if the basic needs are getting met when you go in and you see, you know, that the home is warm, or, you know, there's food or lunch has been made, that they have a nice bedroom or even a bedroom, that they're dressed, all of those basic needs are being met, and you can assess that very early on when you enter a home as a home visitor. And again, my gut would be saying if parents are allowing home visitors to access, then their safety needs are being met. And again, that kind of allowing supports in, it gives a real sense of connection to both the young people that you're working with and the family members, you know, and those trusting relationships really form the basis and the work that's carried out, the work that you do. And it certainly is the same for me in my work in family support. It's that connection, that relationship that I'm building up based on what I see and what I feel. And I think sometimes we discount feelings, and we shouldn't. You know, the gut is a great guide for what we're witnessing or feeling when we go into a family home. Again, using Maslow's hierarchy as a guidance, we can see that children thrive. And I suppose in that context of having access to nourishing food and warmth, nurturing, and those enduring loving relationships, they're really having significant relationships with adults. Obviously, there's a but. Children's lives embrace many domains beyond that of the parental relationships. And this, you know, what we're saying about sometimes the home isn't the place where they receive those things that build on their attachments or build on their positive outcomes. But if you have older siblings, aunts, uncles, extended family who have access to you in a positive way, the school and the childcare environment, this has changed dramatically over the last number of years in what schools offer in relation to breakfast clubs and homework clubs and homeschool liaisons and counsellors. Having access to that in the school makes a huge impact on the outcomes for the child. Their little friends, those little, you know, clubs that they have now, they certainly didn't have them when I had mine. You know, the baby massage, the little mama and children groups, the music groups. There's just so many resources available and available free of charge or low cost. And I think that's just amazing. And again, these relationships can often compensate for the negative parental influences a child may experience. And again, I'm speaking to you, but I also know that you know this stuff, that practitioners now work from a strengths-based perspective. This is phenomenal in supporting families and meeting them where they are and seeing how well they're doing. It mightn't be your well, but it's there, you know, that good enough. And it allows us to position ourselves to support and empower the families that we work with. We also have the need to recognize that there is a serious nature, if there is that serious nature of parental substance misuse, the impact that will have on children and young people. So it's being aware of the strengths, but also recognizing if there's been harm done or there's a risk of harm to children. So knowing that. And again, there's many tools available, resources online that you can access that would guide you in what you think that would look like. And again, I'm sure you have good line management, and I know one of your webinars was on supervision. So using those resources that are already available to you to, if you have any questions or doubts about what you're seeing or what you're feeling. Children living in families affected by parental alcohol and other drug use are often not observed, they're not spoken to or listened to enough, and they can suffer from chronic emotional and physical neglect. And all of this goes unnoticed because I don't know if any of you have experience working in addiction. Addiction itself, it feeds on secrets and lies and drama. And for many children, they learn very early on how to hide what's going on in the family home. So they may never verbalize it. And I know when professionals find out, God, I had no idea. I didn't see it. And that's because the environment they're in supports those secrets and those lies. I find this extremely important, especially, I suppose, for home visitors or for those that work in schools with young people. So I know I work with families and the children may not have the proper uniform. They may not be able to get to school on time. They may be hungry or disruptive. And I know our history, our long time history is to label like they're bold and they're showing up and they don't care. But if we look at a layer under that, I don't know if any of you are trauma informed, then those behaviors tell us a completely different story to what's going on for them at home. You know, why are they showing up late every day? Why are they always hungry? You know, they tell us in different ways, and while they may never verbalize it, we can see it. Often the extent of parents' problems can consume professionals who are working with families, making it more difficult to maintain a focus on the needs of the children. And again, I would consider that this is changing in relation to many services that work with family members. And the reason that you're consumed with a person who is in addiction and all the energy goes there, again, is because of the chaos of it. So you can get pulled into what they're doing, what they're not doing, and you miss what's going on in the family. So always bringing your attention past, I don't know if you get the opportunity to work with people in addiction or using drugs, but if you look past their drug use and their behavior and see the impact that it's having on the family. The extent of the problem may not be initially evident, making it more challenging to develop a true picture of the realities of the child's day-to-day life. At all stages of childhood and adolescence, children and young people may be adversely affected, and adolescents, although seemingly resilient, may be vulnerable, and I would say they are. Keeping the child and young person at the centre of the care process and their welfare paramount is therefore both an important principle and a skill. And I'm sure you're all very well versed and skilled in this area. What I will say is I have had experience working with moms who are in addiction, the women who are in addiction, many of the moms. And while even though actively using, they can and do provide great parenting skills because they will prioritize that even over their drug use or to the best of their ability. And sometimes that good enough parenting is enough for the child. And I think TUSLA has adopted now, you know, that they will put the supports into the family home rather than take the child out of the family. And I think there's a really good reason for that. The reason I think that sometimes when you walk into a family home and there's issues that unfold as time goes on. So I would find that, and again, I would just relate it to myself, the idea of somebody coming to visit me. And I throw everything I have under the cupboard, under the stairs, you know, so my house looks clean. And I think for family members, allowing professionals into their house before the get-go, they're feeling they're going to be judged because you haven't yet built the relationship. They don't know that you're as human as they are, and they just see it as, oh, they're going to judge me, they're not going to think I'm good enough, my house not clean enough. So, you know, so you hide things until that relationship is built and it starts to unfold in a natural way. that would be my experience. I don't know how you relate to that. What is abundantly clear from research and evidence-based practice is the correlation between risk and harm. The requirement for evidence-based learning and development on alcohol and other drugs to be made available to all practitioners supporting vulnerable children and their parents. So that comes from the Hidden Harm Strategic Statement. And I think it's really relevant to you as home visitors, that the more information you have on what you may encounter and experience, you may never, but, you will encounter something. And having that knowledge gives you a confidence to know it. And maybe if needs be, obviously, again, you're following organizational policies and procedures, do you address it or do you get support on how to address it? But I think having that information to all practitioners who go in, who have access to vulnerable children and families, it's paramount. Again, the brighter futures and better outcomes, the 3 layers, and we've spoken about it in the slides. That support that you can offer parents, when you go into the family home, huge. That relationship that you can build with the families that you walk into their homes. What a privilege. What an absolute privilege that families allow you into their homes. And what you're providing them is gifts, that early intervention and prevention piece, those tools and resources. And again, we're going back to that practical piece, what you can offer them in a practical way and a non-judgmental way, vital. And that you have the opportunity to listen to children and young people who may not be listened to for the rest of the day, and you're there offering that one-to-one interest in them and their growth and development. I just think it's a beautiful job, absolutely beautiful. So I know we were talking about the substance use versus misuse, and the understanding the difference between substance use, misuse, and addiction. It's important to understand the difference between substance use and misuse, especially in relation to addiction. And what's normal and innocent to you may be in fact hazardous or even harmful to some. The use of drugs and alcohol can be minimal, carrying minute life changes. Yet substance misuse is found to cause some degree of impact and change as the priority of the use begins to take over life. This slide, I suppose, speaks to me in relation to a general relationship we have with drugs. We have a hierarchy, it appears. My experience would lend itself to believing that we have a hierarchy. So alcohol is quite all right. With not too much judgment. Coke depends on who's using it and where. And again, that goes back to a class issue. So if you're, professionals and you finish work for the week and you're all out and you're using Coke, and obviously the alcohol stimulates the Coke use, so you can drink more and stay out for the weekend. And I understand it, it's not that I don't, but it is more acceptable. I think society sees that as more acceptable than the heroin user or the crack user. So we absolutely have a hierarchy of drug use in Ireland. And the strangest piece is the alcohol is still the biggest killer, and costs more to the state than any other drug. And I suppose the cocaine being a stimulant has a different set of behaviors than the way to, you know, you're chilled and all of those things. And the idea that myself, I drink, and I will happily have a glass of wine with dinner, and go for a night out, and that would be substance use. I probably don't identify myself as a substance user, and then I suppose the spectrum of it is lending itself into the misuse. Again, I'll use COVID as a clear example, because many people went from a glass of wine to a bottle of wine, because you were home all day. You weren't getting up for work the next day, you didn't have anything to do. The idea that Coke, the high it gives you, but how it lasts very little, I think 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. So people do, you know, it's one of those drugs that people are more at risk of misusing, to get through the day, to get through the week. I actually worked with parents of a young person, and he was smoking weed. But actually what the dad was saying, he was in business, and his employer encouraged the workers to use cocaine because it increased productivity. So, you know, it's as broad as it's long in relation to how we accept and how we see things and what lens we're looking through drug use at. And I think it's easily, you know, moves from, you know, from the prescription drugs, the painkillers. I don't know if you have access to Netflix, and the programs that are on around the pharmaceutical companies and how they've increased the sales of drugs based on pain and the OxyContin. If you haven't, I would recommend that you have a look at them. They're really interesting. And I think for, you know, the likes of the powerhouses that be, it suits them, you know, to increase substances and the need for them. Just in this, I'm actually going to put in a little bit. I haven't put in vaping, but I don't know if you've seen on the news a little girl from Belfast that ended up in hospital. Her mum didn't know she was vaping. So these services that promote drugs, substances, and substances misuse or use target kids. You know, the alcohol pops target kids, those vapes are targeting kids, and the weed through anxiety, through that word anxiety, are targeting kids. So there's a real issue in relation to educating ourselves on substances and how we view them as a society. I think it's an environmental issue. So when I was doing this, I was laughing to myself because I was saying, you know, neglect of important duties, you know, and I go back to the bottle of wine or a few drinks or a night out with the girls or a night out with the lads, whichever it is, that it does impair your cognitive functions and physical capabilities, and at some point will likely result in neglect of responsibilities associated with work, home life, and or school. One may not recognize or have the ability to respond appropriately to the child's needs. And again, we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. On a personal level, what I will say, I think for many of us, I won't say for all, but for a lot of people who will drink socially, will have had a hangover, and absolutely have no issue in holding my hand up and say, did it impair me the next day? Absolutely. So you can imagine if that's a social use of a substance, how it would impair me if I was using that all of the time. And again, that taking time out to nurse the hangovers or the come downs. They have various side effects, such as hangovers and come downs. The come down, I'm going to really in relation to cocaine. And the come down from cocaine it's not nice. It really isn't nice. So it can't be nice on family members. I know with the parents that I work with, and when they're impacted by somebody's using cocaine, they lock themselves in their room, they get really cranky, they're paranoid. It's not a nice come down, which is probably why I don't use it. No, but but it is the impact that's going to have on the rest of the family. The physical state may be temporary, but it can significantly disrupt a person's ability to meet commitments, as well as invite unhealthy behaviours, such as poor eating and a lack of exercise. Alcohol and drug use within families, it's a large stressor. It really is. I mean, I seen the map that you showed there in relation to where you're situated on a national level. And what I can say is the referrals that are coming in to our drug services and family support services have increased tenfold. There's a real issue out there. And it has a change in face, even in relation to the class of people that we're having to meet, whereas previously we would have recognized there was a generational areas of poverty or disadvantaged and generational substance misuse and trauma. And now we have educated parents coming and their young people are using smoking weed and they're, or vaping or doing coke. So it's right across the board. And it really, really is, or feels like, I've no stats, but it feels like there's an epidemic of new drugs, new users and new experiences of families that we're working with. And maybe you can give me some feedback on what your findings are. Are you finding that? I have chosen the 3 drugs, cannabis, weed and alcohol, just to give you a the briefest overview. And if you are interested in learning more about drugs and want some education on that, just contact Michelle and we'll organise maybe a new webinar just in relation to drugs and what's out there and what's being used. But I thought, and again, you can let me know. Yeah? You there? Okay.
I'd say that was a mistake, Brenda.
Okay. So the 3 I've chosen, as I said, is cannabis, weed and alcohol. So cannabis is an hallucinogenic drug that comes in a few different forms and can be used in a number of ways. Cannabis can make a person feel relaxed and calm, and one can also become quiet or talkative, giggly, subdued, sleepy, and animated. However, cannabis can also increase your anxiety, paranoia, dizziness, nausea, restlessness, and it can cause distorted perceptions. Cannabis contains dozens of psychoactive chemicals. The most important chemical is THC, as it's primarily responsible for the positive and negative effects listed above. Another important chemical is CBD, which appears to have anti-anxiety and antipsychotic properties. Now, I have put the link to the cannabis publication from the HSE in the resources. But what I do want to speak about cannabis is now it is completely different to what we would have known cannabis to be 20 odd years ago. Excuse me. It's manufactured now within an inch of its life. The THC levels have increased, and they're the predominantly the chemical that you're going to find in the weed that kids are smoking now, and the CBD levels are minimal. And again, we've seen an increase, in the vapes, the CBD vapes, CBD oil, and we would recommend them over smoking weed, because they are proven to reduce your levels of anxiety. But smoking weed now, I cannot tell you the impact that's having on our young people. And they're starting as young as 10. But it's being again marketed in a business style for young people to manage their stress. And I would have a great fear of people not being educated in relation to cannabis. So yeah, I would recommend or suggest that you download that booklet for yourself from the HSC. It's really informative. Cocaine. Do you know what's to say about cocaine? The party drug, isn't it? And it certainly has a life of its own. Cocaine is a strong but short acting stimulant drug, which comes in white powder. And as I said, it is that stimulant. It gives you the high energy, that the ability to keep on keeping on, stay in the party, on the dance floor. It can be used by dividing into lines and snorting up the nose with a tutor, snort or a straw. It can also be smoked or made into a solution to inject. The effects of cocaine start quickly, and as said earlier on, it only lasts for saying 30 minutes there. You may feel more alert, energetic, exhilarated and confident. Your heart and pulse rate speed up suddenly. And again, you can understand, so if you're using drugs, which is a depressant with a stimulant, so your heart is shooting up and coming back down, highs and lows, real increase of heart issues there. Hyperactivity, dilated pupils, the dry mouth, the sweating and loss of appetite. So you will absolutely see a noticeable difference in somebody who's actively using cocaine. That cheekbone look, that hollow weight loss. Higher doses can make you feel very anxious and panicky, and you would have an increased sex drive. The come down from cocaine varies from person to person, but can include headaches, mouth ulcers, feeling anxious, depressed, irritable and paranoid, and feeling tired and exhausted, difficulty concentrating and or difficulty sleeping. And I suppose our experience in drug services would be, the person who uses cocaine from Friday to Sunday could absolutely be staying in bed Monday to Thursday and only start getting up and getting active again, knowing that on Friday that they're going to start using again. So it's probably an easier spot than alcohol or weed in relation to drug use. But definitely the impact of it and its addictive qualities are extreme. Alcohol, yeah. This is always of interest to me, just in relation to how Ireland's relationship with alcohol are often seen, the drunken Irish, or the Irish love a drink or whatever. But it really is a powerful psychoactive sedative substance. It changes how you think. It can absolutely lift your mood and make you feel relaxed at first. But alcohol creates disinhibition. And again, just from personal use, it's that, that conversation you have after time you wake up with the fear. Oh my God, what did I say or what did I do? And you definitely are more open to taking more risks when you have a few drinks on you than if you don't. And an awful lot of people who are socially awkward or have social anxiety will use alcohol to manage social situations. So the disinhibition can result in angry outbursts, disclosing inappropriate information, acts of harm towards self or others, taking dangerous risks with your own or others' well-being that you might not normally take. Even the morning after, a person can still have some level of disinhibition and also struggle with emotional instability. This can result in emotional overreaction or emotional numbness, which can have significant implications for parent or child interactions and attachment relationships. And I think for anybody who has even their own family members, you know, even if you were to look at your own family systems outside of your working role, you will recognize this. Some of you may recognize the cocaine, and some of you may have family members who smoke weed. And again, if it's in moderation and you're functioning well, and it isn't, you know, that you're not doing anybody any harm, then that is okay. Do you know, there's no judgment. For I'd say all of the services I work with, we work from a harm reduction model. So, you know, obviously it's the idea of reducing your use, risk assessing, putting plans in place. If you are going out for a night, you know, can you leave the kids with your grandparents so that, you know, you can have a lie on in the morning and not be grouchy and shouting at them, or, you know, doing all of those things. Yeah, making plans to minimize the risk or harm that may happen to families, you know. So I think it's easy to recognize. I know I did home visits for TUSLA, and obviously they came from social work referrals, so there was always the intention of there being risk of harm when I was going into family homes. But it was simple things, you know, and again, you go back, I think Josephine was saying that practical piece that you can do. So I would work with parents again, actually, would be playing and showing them how to play with the child. I don't know if any of you have experience with the Martha Mayo method. If you haven't, I suggest you look up. Lovely, lovely piece of work. But mainly it was, you know, oh, you know, if that's something that you are planning on doing, how can you minimize the risk, you know, to waking up in the morning and feeling a little bit grumpy? Can you get up 15 minutes before your child, you know, and just sit in the kitchen and have a coffee or a tea? Can you have the school uniform ready? Can you put the cereal in a bowl the night before? All of those little tips, they may even be things that you wouldn't consider, think, because they're that simple, but actually they all play a role in supporting the parent to parent. So I think it's an easy. Sometimes we get caught in our heads and we overcomplicate situations, and sometimes just going back to basics, or even if you're a parent yourself, what works for you, you know. There's no harm in making suggestions, and they'll take it or they won't. It will work or it won't, as long as you're not doing any harm. I think be very open to, again, based on the relationship you have with the parent. I don't know if you want to jump in, or will I explain the breakout room, Michelle?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
doing well. That's brilliant with time. Well
Is there
done.
any questions before I go into
Yeah.
the breakout room? Do you want to answer, or is there any questions people want to ask?
Yeah, if you can just turn on your mic if you do, or if you want to type it into the chat as well. Brenda, can I ask you a question even around,
Yeah.
like you were saying that you've home visited obviously for